The 1988 documentary Hotel Terminus tells the troubling story of Klaus Barbie, a notorious Gestapo agent who terrorized the town of Lyon during occupation. When, 40 years after the war, the French finally apprehended Barbie, they expected the trial to educate, heal, and bring justice. This is the story of why justice failed. Klaus Barbie was an innocent boy, beloved by his classmates and respected for his father's occupation as a teacher. Young Klaus aspired to become a priest until, drawn by the allure of the Nazi Party, Klaus began a faction amongst his classmates supporting Hitler and the SA. On September 26, 1935, at the age of 22, Klaus Barbie joined the SS, where he quickly gained a reputation as a brilliant extortionist in the occupied Netherlands. As a result of this talent, he was promoted to the head of the Gestapo in Lyon, where he set up his headquarters at the Hotel Terminus. Known as the Butcher of Lyon, Klaus Barbie is cited by some historians as being directly responsible for the deaths of as many as 14,000 French and Jewish citizens. Many survivors of Klaus's brutality stress his sheer enjoyment of torture and sadistic methods of extortion. Klaus became known throughout Germany for his success in capturing a prominent French resistance leader, Jean Moulin. After the war, the French would try to use this case as an example of crimes against humanity against the French, only to find out that members of the French resistance actually collaborated with Barbie in order to betray Moulin. The French were not the only ones with a tricky history with Barbie. After the war, the US Counterintelligence Corps hired Barbie as an informant, where he helped to target communists in the post-war political sphere and spy on the Soviets. In exchange for valuable information, such as the fact that the USSR was developing nuclear weapons, the United States provided Barbie safe passage to Bolivia. Barbie's penchant for radicalism stayed with him in Bolivia, where, under the pseudonym Klaus Altmann, he and other ex-Nazis named the Fiancés of Death befriended high-ranking Bolivian officials, including dictators Hugo Banzer and Luis Tejada. While working as an arms trader, he was promoted to the rank of lieutenant colonel in the Bolivian Armed Forces. Thanks to his international network of supporters, including continued collaboration with US intelligence officers, Barbie successfully evades arrest until, 40 years later, thanks to the work of Nazi hunters Sergei and Vita Klarsfeld, sufficient public outcry warrants extradition by the French and Bolivian governments.
The extradition of Klaus Barbie is met with widespread enthusiasm in France. The French see this as an opportunity for catharsis, as a chance to bring history to justice and to come to terms with their suffering and memories under German occupation. However, the circumstances of Barbie's trial quickly bring to light numerous complications and controversies which mar the hopes of finding such closure. First, France's legal statutes limited the prosecution period of war crimes to 20 years. Thus, the charges had to be made under the designation of crimes against humanity, crimes against a population based on its origins. However, this approach brought the French people under fire as well, given the significant collaboration with Nazis in persecuting and enacting the final solution against the Jews.
Barbie was defended by Jacques Verguet, who turned the trial by accusing traitors of the French resistance for the arrest and death of Jean Moulin, and also complicity in the persecution of the Jews. Furthermore, Verguet, born in Vietnam, leveled accusations against the French government for its abuses as a colonial power and asserted that it lacked the moral grounds upon which to condemn Barbie. After liberation, the French resistance temporarily prevailed as the sole governing body throughout France. In this brief interlude, the resistance forfeited any moral high ground they might have had, as they summarily executed Nazis and collaborators alike. Many critics of the trial argued that it served a political purpose to shift blame from French atrocities onto the Germans.
Discussing Klaus Barbie, we are presented with three running themes. First, we are confronted with the challenge of reconciling contradicting perspectives. What we see is that opinions are vastly different depending on the relationship with respect to Barbie. The French resistance and Jews persecuted by Barbie would describe as twisted torture and ruthlessness, while SS officers and even unaffected French would appear to be indifferent or even defend Barbie. In a singular character as seemingly straightforward as a Nazi torturer, how do we reconcile these different aspects of an individual and more broadly their mark on history? Can we trust all these accounts? And to what extent should we try to understand Barbie as a human, an aspiring priest turned torturer, or do we begin to lose sight of the context and significance of his actions in this process? A second concerns assigning morality. While we condemn Barbie as the Butcher of Lyon, he's recruited by the US government as an informant against communist Russia, in some cases providing valuable information. In a similar vein, the Vichy state facilitates the persecution of Jews, allowing Barbie to exact the damage that he did. The question then naturally follows, To what degree are each of these actors guilty? In pursuing this discussion, to what extent and end do we try to assign morality? In Klaus Barbie's trial, we see nations acting questionably according to self-interest. We also see that drawing moral lines on the public stage can elicit opinions with questionable motive. The French and Jews found themselves arguing about who experienced greater suffering. These are the considerations to be made in light of moralizing history.
The protraction of Klaus Barbie's case for 40 full years after the Second World War serves today as a record of how blind submission to ideology can cause a nation to obstruct justice. Barbie made himself useful to the American government by impeding communist expansion in Europe and Bolivia, a mission that during the Cold War apparently redeemed his murder of 14,000. The case also illustrates how historical narratives might adapt in order to serve a political purpose. With the end of the Cold War on the horizon, the image of Barbie as a valuable ally lacked legitimacy. No longer serving a purpose, the fungible conception of Barbie returned to that of the Butcher of Lyon, the unredeemable Nazi. The 40 years between crime and trial helped shroud the extent of Barbie's crimes. The trial provides an excellent exploration of the dispersal of culpability within a group. For instance, Barbie deported 44 orphan children to Poland, yet it is more difficult to prove that he knew of their inevitable fate at the death camps. Barbie represents an entire generation of ex-Nazis who continued to thrive after the war. The war did not end with the re-establishment of justice, but rather was swept under the rug as the Cold War demanded international attention. Only now that the last of the war criminals are expiring can historians begin to piece together the fragmented narrative of their culpability.